What's up, guys? I am back, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video. I've been a little under the weather. I got a really bad stomach bug a couple days ago. It could be something to do with my new diet, everything. I've been trying to eat healthy, but it just seems like it was a quick fever style stomach bug. Lasted about 4 days. Kind of left me low energy. Um, couldn't keep anything in, honestly, is how I can say it eloquently, I guess. Today's the first day I was feeling a little bit good, okay. Like last night I felt okay-ish, but I was still a little scared, because I didn't want to like chance it and then show up and then get rocked because I'm hopeful or optimistic. But today I feel okay, and I feel like I can um, do something, and I would like to make a video. Um, so yeah, here I am, and I was looking at a bunch of like I was just on Twitter while I was sick and like browsing the internet and stuff like that as one does. And I saw a bunch of tier lists and stuff like that floating around, and I thought they were super interesting because um, I wanted to do one, but I wanted to do one like on stream slash video with you guys. But I currently have not streamed in a very long time, and I don't want to make that commitment to coming back to streaming until I really want to come back to streaming entirely. So yeah, I decided let's do a tier list of the team up to Darkness Ablaze cards now that we have a couple tournaments into the books, um, a couple of Hegster tournaments, a couple of the Perfection tournaments, a couple of the 77 Japan versus US battle. Like a lot of these things came into play already. We have a little bit of results to look off of, and so it seems like I can start putting things into tier lists. So we'll start off the bat with Decidueye. I think Decidueye is a tier 2 deck because at the end of the day, no matter how hard you slice it, it is a stage 2 deck, and if you're not playing like a Rowleg or ADP or something to boost its damage and boost its consistency, you're probably not getting set up as fast as you'd like. And if you're playing something like an ADP, games are going to get pretty hard when you give up 3 prizes off the bat, unless you find a way to pick it up and move it. Mad Party, I think, also tier 2, because it's like a deck that can do stuff, but it's not very consistent slash like the high HP of a lot of Pokemon, including the existence of ADP in the format, means that it will have a tough time reaching those numbers that it needs to reach without expending too much resources. That's one of the reasons Night March was so good. It was able to hit those numbers without expending too many resources due to the existence of Battle Compressor. Therefore, like when a Night March, like a good Night March had thinned its deck out, it would have infinite resources to kind of close out the game with puzzles of time and other, stuff. Scizor VMAX, I don't really know much about Scizor. I'm just gonna put it here. Salamence I'm putting in 3 because I think Salamence actually has potential, and I think it could be a deck. I just don't know if it's necessarily better than Scorch. But I do think Salamence is a very good card. I am someone who is a fan, and I will try to make it work, hopefully. Lucario Melmetal I'm putting in tier 1 because I think Lucario, Melmetal, and Mewtwo, it won the Players Cup, in the Player Cup, not Invitational, just Players Cup. It did not only won, but the same 60 card list took first and second. With the right list, you could just auto win fire decks. Um, you have a very favorable matchup into ADP. Um, you're all around a very, very strong deck um, that is slow and isn't flashy whatsoever, but you kind of beat a lot of the meta decks. Yeah, Welder Mewtwo is going into tier 1 because I think Welder Mewtwo is still very strong. I've been a very strong proponent of it. As long as Mewtwo has a lot of attackers to use, it will still be strong. The only reason it's not going into tier S is because we did lose Turbo Strike Solgaleo, and we did lose Macargo GX. And I think those two were really attackers that put Mewtwo over the top because Turbo Strike was virtually unfair, being able to power up 2 Mewtwo's in the same turn and do 120 damage, which is like a really good chunk of damage to set up any 2-shot on any Pokemon. Um, and then uh, Macargo GX was like your end all be all finisher to take out almost any threat, any big threat. So now the big damage output potential of Mewtwo is heavily limited. Um, yeah, sadly enough. Charizard VMAX I'm putting in tier 3. I tried to make Charizard work. You guys saw my list. It's on here. Not for post rote, but you guys have seen it. I tried to make it work. I really like the deck. But unfortunately, it's a little bit too big and a little bit too much effort to make going when you could have Scorch does the same thing much easier in terms of that. Which brings me to Senti, which I'm putting in tier 2 because I don't think it's a tier 1 deck in terms of getting set up and actually beating a lot of the tier 1 decks. I think it's just one of those decks that will set up, do what it needs to do, and get you a consistent couple of wins. But if you encounter a big gimmick or something, it could be. It's not a deck that has a lot of adaptability in the way it's built or done. The Japanese players did bring out a Scorch deck that played Jesse and James and a stamp combination to really limit your opponent's hand and then go from there, which I think was really cool. Um, but yeah, that's where I put it. I don't know. I don't know what this guy does. So I'm just putting him here. E-Turn is tier 1 because Eternatus has a lot of support going for it. It's basically like the Mega Rayquaza of this format. 2 attachments for 270 potential is really strong. Nothing can rival that damage. In the game, it can one-shot Mewtwo. It can get the one-shot on ADP with the Ziggy. Um, it is quite literally probably the best deck for how lackluster it is in terms of just things happening. I assume this is straight Vika. I'm putting that in tier 3. I haven't really seen any straight Vika decks. I didn't really think the deck is very good. It doesn't really have the same, like you don't have E-Powers. You don't have Thunder Mountain. Losing a lot of the electric support does hurt like straight Vikavolt decks and stuff like that. So I think that's a card deck that goes there. Desi Goons I'll put in the same tier 2 category because I think it's the same setup oriented deck where like if you don't have a card to help you set up, then you're at a struggle. But you do have more basics now than you wouldn't just straight Decidueye. Um, so it seems like you're just banking off the fact that you'll have 2 potential auto wins or like 2 potential auto win conditions if you can pull it off. Um, yeah, and that's pretty much that's all it is. Yeah. ADP Zacian is the tier S deck of this format. I think it's the pinnacle of what needs to be played around. ADP really adds a crux to the format and how the game is played. Um, the discussion around what's going on Twitter and stuff like that, I'll leave that there. I just think ADP is a very, very strong card since the day it came out. It does a lot with very little. It basically is a cheat card that says, like, let me accelerate the pace of the game to the point where um, I can take an extra prize, I can take extra damage. Like, I'm basically cheating the entire game. Sorry, one sec. I gotta respond to this. But I will continue doing. Rillaboom. I mean, you have Rillaboom, so it's probably a tier 3 deck, where, like, you have a lot of potential to actually set up and actually get things going, where you can play, like, an Eggrow, the Rillaboom combo. That's a lot of space, though. Like, if you're playing the Eggrow, the Rillaboom stage 2 to set up, like, you are playing a lot of cards that require a lot of space. So maybe not. Cinderace, I'm going to put in tier 3 again, because I think Cinderace last format had some potential. I did see it a couple times in like the Limitless Championships, places like that, where it would basically be like a Firebox deck, but Cinderace would be the hero of the deck as opposed to like Reshizard or something like that. But at the same time, I think that Cinderace is not as good as Scorch. It's like all 3 of these guys, like they're good, but they are not as good as Scorch. Is like the running theme of like what is going on here. I think. Yeah, and then Inteleon I'm gonna put in tier 1 because I think Inteleon can abuse Frostmoth. I think Inteleon can do a lot of damage, and the 60 snipe really helps with all these new bench sitters like Crobat that exist. And so getting that bench snipe really helps. It has cards like Capacious Bucket and Training Court that really help it just kind of accelerate what it wants to do for the amount of time it's putting in, and that really gives it that oomph that it needs to do stuff. And Pika should technically not be a real deck right now. Um, so based on that virtue, I think it rises to prominence because I think you have a good Eternatus matchup. I think you have a pretty decent Luke Metal matchup. I think no, you probably lose to Luke Metal, but I think you have a pretty good Mewtwo matchup. Like a lot of these decks in the top quadrant are like pretty okay matchups for you. Um, I don't really know what Toxicity does, but I'll put it in tier three. I think Draga is tier two still because you do have a couple of good matchups that you can kind of smoke. Baby Blounds, Mewtwo, um, Decidueye is probably fine. Um, but I think Scorch is still super tough for you, and I think Inteleon's probably pretty bad, and I think Eternatus is like outright unwinnable. Um, so that's kind of what I think on that one. Sandaconda is a tier 2 deck. I think I have to put it there now, out of pure respect for Nick Robinson, who did win the Ban ADP tournament. The Hyperlex Ban ADP, like, if we ban ADP, what's going to happen? And he did one with the Sandaconda deck. Um, so Sandaconda has proven that it can do well in a format where uh, there's no counter to it with ADP. And it basically like cleaned up the Eternatus. So I guess I got to give the tier 2 respect. I'm not really sold on it, but I think I'll put it there. Phalanx tier 4, Malamar tier 4, this guy tier 4, this guy tier 4. These guys all kind of blow. I'm not entirely sure why their decks are archetypes, but they are all kind of bad. Lapras in tier 3, I think it's just a worse Inteleon in terms of what it's trying to do. The 3 energies that you can put on Inteleon carry so much weight and give you so much agency in the game when you can just set up that threat across the board. So yeah. Stonjourner tier 3 again. I think your only decent matchup is actually Eternatus, but you lose a lot of agency because Pika Robin is no longer at the forefront of the metagame. Not really sure what else you beat. I haven't seen many of these lists, so Goon I still put in tier 2, only because I think you can cheese out matchups, and having a bunch of auto wins based on just what you are is like really invaluable. But at the same time, uh, just not being able to beat VMAX decks is a little bit iffy. So you also lose Yveltal GX, so I can't really put you comfortably in a tier 1 slot. Sableye deck tier 3 seems like a for fun deck. You'd play it, try to pull off one major wombo combo. If you don't get it, you concede, go next. Pika, I think, is still tier 1. I think it's still a tier 1 deck. It's not going to be played much, but the players who play Pika can play Pika really well. We saw Isaiah Bradner getting top 8 at one of the tournaments. With Pika, no E-Power, but the lists are a lot more focused around like Raichu and Paralysis and like the 2-shot game. And now that that's the case, a lot of lists are not currently playing Switch that don't need to play Switch, because what really do you need the Switch for when you can play things like Balloon, Scoop Up Net instead, and those are just like objectively better a lot of the time. Decks like Mewtwo and ADP will still play like their 4 Switch, their full set of Switch, but then things like Eternatus and Inteleon will not, more likely than not, because they don't need to, or Scorch does not need to. So if Pika can catch someone sleeping at the wheel, it's a deck that can take charge. It's a tier 1.5 deck between 1 and 2, I think, in my honest opinion, but there is no 1.5, and I don't feel comfortable putting it in 2, so I feel more comfortable putting it in 1 because of all the support it still has behind it. Baby Blounds, tier 1. It lost a lot of tools in the rotation, which kind of sucks for it, but at the end of the day, it still has Welder, it still has Crystal, and you just have to up your energy count. We saw Jose Maria taking second at the Hyperlux tournament originally with it. Super good card, I think. Super good deck still. Pram got top 8, I think, with the no ADP. ADP is a tough matchup. Cramorant really can supplement a lot of the damage you're missing. Cramorant's really good. Yeah. Excadrill, I think, is a tier 2 deck. If you know how to play it correctly, like a mill deck, you can play it. If you can't, you can't. I can't play it, so I'm not going to talk on it. Tomb, I think, is also tier 2. Um, just you like have to just figure out how to like what to tech for. There's a lot of stuff to tech for, and everything's really big now, so it becomes really hard to kind of kill things. Firebox is tier 3, I think, because again, you could be Firebox, but you could just be sent to Scorch. So it depends on how you want to build it and how you want to play the game. But I think sent to Scorch is objectively better. Last but not least, ADP Decidueye. I know I talked about it at the beginning by accident because I didn't see this. Um, yeah, at least you can tell it's not scripted or anything. But ADP Decidueye is scary. It's good, but at the same time, you're playing three prizes like ADP or Raweg. So in that situation, all of a sudden the deck is slightly worse. The Japanese will be playing in the US 7v7 brought a greens version, which was interesting, but at the end of the day, how much agency does that really give you? So this is my current tier list. If I were currently playing tournaments, I wouldn't know what I'd play, but I did bring Mewtwo to the tournament, the Japanese tournament. So I think my go-to decks, all things considered, would either be Mewtwo, E-Turn, or Inteleon, based on how simple E-Turn and Inteleon are to play. And Mewtwo is a comfort deck for me. But if I wanted to really get saucy and learn how to play something, I would probably put time into Scorch or making a Decidueye variant work because I think there's a lot of potential behind Decidueye. I just don't know how you can make a stage 2 deck really shine, without falling to the prey of being a stage 2 deck. So if you guys enjoyed this, thank you for watching. I'll try to do more tier list stuff in the future. But for now, that's your video. I'm going to try to keep doing videos, but it's, again, really tough when there's nothing going on. Um, that being said, love the community. Love you guys. Like the video, subscribe, comment. You know the drill. Really appreciate all the support. And we'll see you guys